Well, here I am in Greencastle, PA, getting unloaded. I've been here about 5 minutes and I already feel the rumblings in the trailer, so that's good. This place can be a mixed bag of how long it takes to get unloaded. Food Line, which are mostly south of here. I don't know if there's another Food Line as far north as Greencastle, Pennsylvania. I noticed them a lot on the way down to North Carolina and South Carolina. And when I lived in Georgia, there were Food Lions that we could go to. I have a low-key message today. I've been thinking about the Messiah because it's Christmas. Today's the 29th of December. Happy birthday, Christiana, yesterday. So it's still Christianimus because Christianimus has to last at least a week. Revelry, debauchery, and so forth. So I hope that's going well. I like to think about Jesus because I think a lot of the things about him are pure beauty, of course, and some of the prophecies, the camp that was around Isaiah, for example, purely beautiful. Some of the most beautiful words ever written are in the book of Isaiah regarding the Messiah. A lot of Handel's work, Messiah, is based on the book of Isaiah. Some of the very best parts. Good song or two from there that I like to sing that have their texts from the book of Isaiah. But I think part of what was written about the Messiah was wishful thinking from oppressed people. I talked earlier, the title of one of my shows was, "And the government shall be upon his shoulder." And I have to say, I think they got that part wrong. I don't think he could do his job, especially if it's Jesus, the character of Jesus, what we know about Jesus and the way he thought about things. I don't think Jesus could be that kind of a Messiah and still be Jesus. A lot of my friends and relations say they know Jesus. A lot of children, probably all children, know Jesus instinctively. Even if we invented him, they still know who he is. Which means he's more real, not less real, if he never existed in the flesh. Either way, we absolutely know him. The people who say they know Jesus, I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth. Some people in my family make fun of Jesus. Not that they don't still know him. I think some of them would still admit, whether he's an archetype or an historical figure, they feel as though they know him. I was thinking about my son Isaac. He was new to Facebook, or when Facebook was fairly new, and he had a picture of Jesus cradling a baby dinosaur. And boy, did that edify my parents and siblings when they saw that. It's one of the best things on Facebook ever. Poking holes is fun. Stirring the pot is fun. I obviously enjoy it more than most people. But that isn't my mission today. I'm not here to poke holes or certainly not to rattle anyone's cage. I'm not trying to do that at all. I have a feeling that if you're the kind of person who knows Jesus, this is going to be difficult in some ways and yet will fit in other ways. When we're talking about the Messiah as prophesied and what the Messiah is supposed to do, what the Jews of Jesus' time thought the Messiah would do, which is overthrow the Romans and give all the power back to the Jewish nation. And Jews of today still, whether it's a Messiah or, as some of my Jewish friends have said, a messianic age, people are still waiting for the Messiah to fuck shit up, to take the powers and deal with them and restore justice. If you think about the Magnificat, Mary's prophetic words, and the rich he hath sent away empty, he hath put down the mighty from their seats. All that says that the Messiah, as Mary thought about the Messiah, Mary was not an Old Testament prophet, and neither was Elizabeth, her cousin, an Old Testament prophet. They both had these ideas about the Messiah too, as contemporary Jewish citizens. They felt that the point of the Messiah was to take the oppressors and deal with them. I've thought that the world can't be a good place. Russell Brand also has thought this. The world can't be a good place until we've dealt with the psychopaths. Caitlin Johnstone. A lot of my favorite pundits and just thinkers have come to this conclusion. But a wrinkle was recently when I bumped into Michael Singer, a guest of Russell Brand on his show, and he was saying, don't think about the big picture. That's not ever going to fix anything. But think about individuals. And specifically think about yourself, as opposed to healing everyone. The thing about Jesus, the personality that we know he had, the people who think they know Jesus, he wasn't endowed with a Messiah complex. He didn't force anybody. The rich young ruler went away sorrowful, and Jesus didn't run on the road trying to get him back. He didn't have a Messiah complex. So if we think about Jesus and his character, if we think about him coming into the world knowing that he was supposed to be the Messiah, if that is indeed the case, if that's the conclusion he arrived at as he was looking around, he must have thought to himself, I can't do that. That isn't in my nature. That isn't in my character. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I don't think it's the right thing to overthrow the Romans, to kill the enemies. What did he say about enemies? He said, pray for them, which despitefully use you. Rejoice when you're oppressed. Which leads me to another thought. The idea that humans will be happier if everything is solved for them. Because that's patently, obviously false. The happiest humans can be is when they're solving problems. You go camping and you think about where you're going to put your clothesline, and you think about where you're going to pee, and even more, where you're going to poop when you need to do that. And some people don't like to go camping just for that reason. And they'd rather rent a motorhome or even own a motorhome. God forbid. Sorry to anyone who really likes the idea, but what we enjoy, a lot of people, what we enjoy about camping is figuring it out. And after we've figured it out, all of the logistics of that particular campsite.
Please reduce speed.
My truck just told me to reduce speed. And I'm going 0 miles per hour. That's, as you can see. Alright, somebody will have to vouch for me maybe at 8:07 a.m., 8:08 now. My truck told me to reduce speed and I wasn't moving. And no one within sight was moving. That's pretty good. Please reduce speed. Anyway, if you're thinking about a Messiah as somebody who's going to solve all of our problems, you're probably barking up the wrong tree. And Jesus himself didn't operate that way. He wasn't a codependent Savior. He wasn't a codependent parent. Eternal Father, perhaps, but a good Father who doesn't allow people to sponge off of the parents or allow people to let their parents solve all their problems for them. The kind of parent that lets you figure things out. I've often complained about the video game called Zelda because as you start in it, if you're a noob, you just look around and you don't know what to do. And the only way to figure the game out, unless you cheat, is to just start doing things. And then eventually you figure it out. Whatever it is, whatever the objectives are, and the best games probably don't make it clear what winning is. And a lot of games, first-person shooter games, allow you to solve all the problems pacifistically. You can use stun guns or whatever. You can sneak up on people and take them out without killing them. Deus Ex, that was a game that was like that. So figuring it out is what we like to do. And that takes the sting out of death. That's from Handel's Messiah. "O death, where is thy sting?" A beautiful duet. And death has no sting if you realize that it's just moving to a new campsite. When you've solved all the problems in one campsite, then you either need to go home, where you'll keep solving problems at home, hopefully. But eventually, if you get things figured out, death is welcome, because then you get to play again. You get to go to a new campsite and figure it out. And therefore, there isn't any reason ever to be afraid of dying, however you do it, because I was thinking about this particular place where I'm delivering iced tea and lemonade. When I first started coming here, I worked for another company, and there was a lot about this place that wasn't readily apparent. Even how to get here. When you come off of 81, assuming you come that way, you get off at the exit, and then your GPS tells you to turn right and go 4/10 of a mile and then turn left, and then you're coming into this place backwards, and you have to make a turn that's more difficult. But if you come off the freeway and you come to the first light and go straight through the light, it's real easy to get here. This morning I met two Food Lion trucks, and they both stayed back behind at turns and just let me come in, and I was like, oh yeah, that's easier than the other way, where there aren't really many trucks because the other trucks already know what to do. There's real satisfaction in figuring things out. I remember Beethoven said something like that when he was on a road trip. He was in a coach, in a stagecoach, and they got stuck in the mud or something, and he had to help figure out how to get unstuck. And he said it was one of the most joyful things was figuring things out. As much as we like to complain. So, in a way you could say, if I'm right about it, that I've discovered the point of life. And for that reason, I should be happy. And no more fear should pervade, because I just see everything as a way to help me. Which leads me to, what should we do with the villains of the story? Should we think Star Wars style? Should we think balance in the Force is a good thing? I've always chafed at that. But the more I think about it, the more it seems likely that we need a balance in the Force, or else the game won't work at all. I don't know that we should thank the Nemesis no more than Deadpool did, but it feels to me as though we should stop trying to rid the world of Nemesis, because honestly, there isn't a clear line. One of the things Jesus supposedly said was that he would separate the sheep from the goats. And how would we know the difference? And it would be those of you who helped poor people, those of you who, which I agree with, those of you who visited me, meaning my people, when I was in prison, who gave me clothing when I was naked. So, I mean, you can say that there is a continuum, probably, that leads from goats to sheep. But, meaning, the sheep were the ones that were brought to heaven, and the goats were cast into outer darkness with weeping and gnashing of teeth. Jesus said the path is narrow that leads to life, and few there be that find it. So there aren't that many sheep, apparently. But I don't think Jesus would have been quite that coercive. I think he would have pointed out what good is and what evil is, for sure. But all of the talk of hell, and I know that will step on toes, because some of people's favorite passages are Jesus saying about heaven and hell. And it's sort of like Santa Claus and Krampus. You know, that the German parents who didn't think a stick in your stocking was good enough, they had to have Krampus to drag your soul down to hell if you were a bad child. I think if the people who really enjoy all of Jesus' supposed teachings about hell, I think if they enjoy those teachings, they're kind of in the same category as the parents who really talk about Krampus, or talk about Santa Claus. He sees you if you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. So be good, for goodness sake. So you'll be less of a headache to your parents, probably. And if you look at Jesus' character, if you look at his forgiving nature to the woman who was caught in the very act of adultery, if you look at the way he acted and thought, at his overall very Zen-like philosophy, it doesn't jive to think about, you know, the Krampus way of thinking. It doesn't make sense. So if there are sheep and goats who wander around, I don't think there's going to be a clear distinction. I think if you're like Ebenezer Scrooge, you have to be able to choose which one you are. And it doesn't mean anything if you're coerced. And he almost was, if you think about the story, how powerfully he was meddled with by everybody in the story. Even Bob Cratchit, if you think about it that way, and Tiny Tim, every aspect of the carrot and the stick was used in that story to manipulate old Ebenezer into the place he needed to be, into the place he was grateful to find, but still. It isn't how the game of Zelda works. In that game, without Jacob Marley, without the ghosts of the past, present, and future, Ebenezer should have been able to poke around in the game and figure out what truly would make him happy. Not to mention what would make Tiny Tim happy and the rest of the people who owed him money happy. We do ourselves a disservice if we coerce anyone the way the Santa songs do. I don't think that's going to work. And I don't think Jesus, if you think you know Jesus, sit down with him, have a little talk with Jesus, like the song says, with the real Jesus, the person that you know, and say to him, are you going to come back and fuck shit up and establish law and order like that? And if you're the kind of person who's rooting for that, I don't think you're close to the kingdom he described. That doesn't sound like the lion sitting down with the lamb either, if you think back to the book of Isaiah. It just doesn't feel right. And if you say, well, too bad, it's the way it is, deal with it. I don't want to go to heaven with you. I don't want to be eternally in a place with people who have that attitude. And some of the people would say, well, if you don't like this country, go live somewhere else. There's got to be a better place than that. Just say it. So if the real Jesus would say, I love you all the same, the good kids, the bad kids, the sheep, the goats, and we believe that. I think everyone who professes to know Jesus believes that. He does love us all. But what about the fact that within all of us is a goat? Within all the sheep, within the very elect, a goat lives and can come out at any time. And within every goat that we've ever known, a good person often peeks through. Even if you'd argue to the contrary, it's still true. The most heinous villains have their moments of kindness. So it's not easy to say, well, there's just going to be a line drawn, and we're going to separate the good people from the bad people. It's probably more like Zootopia, where you have the predators and the prey all learning to get along with each other. And if you really want to take the power away from a villain, Jesus had some good words about that. And you'll heap burning coals upon his head if you're kind to him and pray for him. And if the game that we're in requires us to be able to solve problems, it's probably necessary to have balance in the force. It's probably necessary to have Sith Lords and other villains. And maybe winning the game isn't when the Messiah comes and takes away all the bad people. Winning the game is probably figuring out how to not be affected by the bad people. In a way, you'll heap burning coals on their head. You'll laugh in their face. You won't be able to be controlled by them anymore. They won't be able to make you afraid. they probably, if you level up to the point where you're winning the game completely and are ready for a new game maybe, if you're at that point, they won't even register. You won't even notice them. They'll be so minuscule in comparison to you. And that might be the place, that might be the part of the story where they just stop being villains. Because what's the point? The villains in Batman, in the TV show, in the original TV show, and then some of the movies afterwards, the villains needed Batman. They would have been horribly saddened by his passing, because then they would have no point. Batman paid too much attention to the villains, if you think about it. He was like an ineffective third-grade teacher who's always noticing what the bad kids are doing and calling attention to it, which is just what they want. Perhaps we'll all learn not to pay attention to the bad kids, and in that way transform them. They won't have any need to rattle our cages anymore. Bullies, they won't know what to do if there's no one who feels bullied by them. That would definitely heap burning coals on their heads. This is already pretty long, so I'll end with that idea. I've been enjoying so much beauty around me, and I have a feeling if I can internalize what I'm saying right now, I'm going to notice beauty even more. I'm going to be really happy to be alive, and I won't dread getting older, because it's just getting me closer to the next place. And it's probably, if I have faith in the universe, it's going to benefit me no matter what.
Turn right at the traffic light, then take the ramp on the right.
You heard her. Turn right at the traffic light, then take the ramp on the right. And I remember the first, I don't know what time it was that I did this. I came around here and I took that ramp on the right where those two trucks are going. But that wasn't the ramp on the right I was supposed to take. I was supposed to go up over the freeway and then take the ramp on the right. I don't remember how I felt emotionally.
Take the ramp on the right to I-81 North toward Chambersburg.
But I probably felt like a dumb shit. I probably felt that fear that someone had noticed that I did something stupid and wasted a few minutes getting turned around again. I probably felt anxiety as I was trying to figure out how to turn around. I was a pretty new truck driver then, at least for delivery trucks, not log trucks. I don't know why we don't get more instruction. Like when stuff like that happens, why there aren't people saying, this is the good stuff. This is the part that makes you feel better when you figure it out. That makes you feel so confident when you come right at the light and you know, even when you have shoddy instructions from your GPS.
Continue on I-81.
You know what to do. It's such a good feeling, as Mr. Rogers would say. Mr. Rogers understood that feeling of confidence. He wanted all of his viewers to know that feeling deep inside. That you are great, whether you're figuring it out and you're in the beginning stages, or whether you're just about down in front of the truck hasn't figured it out yet. Maybe in another lifetime or two, they'll have to drive truck and feel what that feels like, especially if they're in a modern truck and it slows down or even tries to stop because they did that. My reaction is my business. I don't have to change that person's behavior to be where I want to be emotionally. I don't know why nobody ever told me that before. Surely other people must know this. Probably they've been trying to tell me. It's probably been delivered in parables, like Jesus. He said, if you have eyes to see or ears to hear, then you can. But otherwise, the truth is hidden in plain sight. And there's no point in getting miffed that nobody made sure that you got it. I get upset if there's no curriculum in place. I want the factory model. I want, once I know how to do it, I want there to be some plan in place where everybody gets the message and everybody learns what they're supposed to learn. A lot of employers feel that way too, not just teachers. We need to make a policy manual. We need to get everything streamlined. We need to make sure that we don't have costly mistakes. We'll make sure everyone understands this. But then you're removing the discovery for them. You're saving a buttload of money, but there's a trade-off. I wish sometimes I could go back and do it knowing what I know, but then I realize I'm missing the point again and again and again. And I would remove the best part, especially if we're eternal. Then that discovery, that figuring it out, is the only thing that keeps us going. Because once we get to happily ever after, that's when the story ends. And if we don't end, then we have to keep figuring things out. And that would mean we have to keep dying. We have to keep moving to the new campsite. We have to keep consenting to have our memories erased of all the other campsites. We have to start a new video game if we figured the old one out. One that's quite a bit different than the one we just figured out. Because if it's almost the same game again, we'd have a balance of joy between feeling competent and feeling like we already knew too much to enjoy this game. Spoiler alert. There's a reason people say spoiler alert. You could spoil it if you know too much, if you remember too much from other lifetimes. It could spoil it for you. And I probably shouldn't even be saying this stuff out loud if it could spoil it for others. But I'll just console myself with the idea that nobody or hardly anybody watches this